There we go. So my whole intro has been missed. Big deal. Okay. So welcome, July. We're past the 6-month mark. We've survived. Exciting. Let's get started. What do we always do first? Close enough. What year, when, and where was the first commercial FM station done? Hello. Yep, that's working well.
I'm just going to guess New York.
Anyone else? Anyone else? Anywhere else?
United States.
Okay, that narrows it down. Yes, United States, that's good. Nashville. Look at that call sign. That's like a weird ham call sign. March 1st, 1941 in Nashville became the very first commercial FM station. Now, that made me go down the rabbit hole because I thought, could that be WSM? In 43, it changed its call to WSM. However, it's not the same WSM that's here today because apparently it went dark in 51 and then another station came on with the same call in 68, and I suspect that's the one that's still running today. So, who'd have thought? Right, most people thought in the Northeast somewhere, and that's where the centers of technology and everything were, but nope, Nashville, Tennessee, WSM.
Do I have anything they could listen to it on?
Okay, I can't do everything for you. I mean, when was the Armstrong radios produced? When were they kind of came out? I mean, mass produced.
He was broadcasting from Alpine, New Jersey on a regular basis, but they were program tests, and I have some actual recordings I made from the other side of New Jersey.
Mm-hmm. But, I mean, do we know when his format radios were produced? Late 40s?
I'd have to look it up.
I had one of the late 40s.
Late 40s? So, good point. He could have been broadcasting to the cows for 10 years. Yeah, I don't know.
Cows and me, I guess.
The cows and Paul. Exactly. All right, good, cool.
But those things were the old band, the low band.
Yeah, the old FM. Armstrong bands, yeah, correct, right. Okay, remember to sign in, please. Set out the minutes on Sunday. Any issues, any concerns, any edits? Did you all even read them? We're good, okay. And my man is back because, let me tell you, my minutes are really weak compared to what Lloyd would produce. So I'm just kind of going, I think that's what we said. So he's a great asset. So we'll go a couple of old business updates, just rehashing the old thing. A couple of new business. Again, it's light today because we're focusing around the presentation. We'll do the break. Then we have Brian Harrison, who's going to talk to us about radios from the Viet Cong and the Vietnamese armies during the Vietnam War. Take another break. Ben will do his. I've already taken a sneak peek. It's going to be cool. And then we'll open up the announcements for anything, and then the sales. A couple points. Randy's not here today. Unfortunately, his father passed away a couple of days ago. And I don't get to this thing here. So I just want to let you all know, if you wanted to send a note or whatever, that did happen. That's why he's not here. Also, I'd like to introduce Steve, and I apologize for your last name. Please stand up. Drake, that's right. He found us by accident. He was looking for a ham fest in Cumming. We popped up with our, close enough, exactly. So he is not into radios, whatever, but he's big into electronics. He's kind of like another Paul. And he lives in the general area, so he wanted to stop by and check us out and see how we do. And, maybe he'll become a permanent member of this. But welcome. And he's also got some friends. He's got a friend who's a ham radio operator and another friend that's kind of dabbling in this. So we might score 3 out of this package if we're lucky. So, again, welcome. And Mark, who's behind you, is the man if you wanted to sign up and give us your $16 or whatever it is. Actually, it's less than that now because we're halfway through the year. Did I cover all that stuff? Yeah, yada, yada, yada. Okay, great. Old business. We're up to 92 members on Facebook. So we got a couple more the other day. That includes Steve. We passed a motion last month to buy the camera, I bought the camera, there it is. And then also Paul went into great detail last month about the club's financials, which were in good shape, and the residuals from the swap meet. And while we didn't make money from swap meet, it was never designed to make money. It really reinforces the camaraderie. It's a rallying point. It's, sort of our mecca. And so even though it's not a profit center, it has a huge cultural positive impact. So, but that was very, very good. We did not include that on the recording because we didn't, YouTube is open to the world, so we didn't want to put too much stuff out there. New business, as you all know, Paul is retiring in his treasury role at the end of the year, so we're looking for another treasurer for 2026. He's not going anywhere. We still have the brain trust. We put this out early because, and I've said this a couple times, I don't want to wait till November and then try to, look for a treasurer. That gives people basically 6 months to go, yeah, I want to do it, or I think so-and-so would be a good choice. So if you're interested, let us know. We'll put you on the ballot. Paul will tell you everything you need to know or don't want to know. Remember, October 11th, fall swap meet. Pavilion Center, it's outdoors, but it's covered. There is electricity. We're not doing food. Dwight just said that he's actually scored a few more radios without tubes that we'll put up for a silent auction. So we'll have a few things that the club can donate and make a few dollars on it. So thank you, Dwight, on that. And I've already got a flyer drafted, but I'm going to update it with some photos of his stuff, and then we'll post that. Paul has already, which by the way, Paul's not here, you can tell, he's actually already posted the current version of the flyer out there, but we can update that once we get the photos. There will be no October meeting because that is the October meeting. So if you come here on the 11th, you're going to be awful lonely. That's work out. Where am I here?
You can just kind of imagine us all here.
Yes, Paul. Okay, new business. Well, I've already blown through that. So, we have a little bit of time. I want to make sure I kind of covered everything. We've got some cool looking gear over here for the show and tell. If you bought something in, make sure that you fill out the little forms so we know what it is. And yeah.
There's a few things here that I don't see.
Yeah, so put that on there. Because what we started doing also, and I'm going to turn the air down just a hair, what we also started doing is Lloyd takes pictures of all the radios. So when I have the video, I actually edit in a close-up of the radio because it's kind of hard to see from the camera, right? So extra important that we know who and what everything is so we can make it look good. And I do the same thing with the slides and the presentations. I drop them in so they're cosmetically better looking. It's easier to see, especially if you're, way in the back. I know I'm forgetting something. I don't know what it is. We're recording. We're waiting for them. I have a little web camera here just so our guest, Brian, can see us. Basically, he's going to see Dwight, but that's okay. So I just thought it was the right thing to do two-way here. And I know I've forgotten something, and I haven't burned enough time. You want to play charades? No, I'm kidding. Right, so Arias has brought in tubes. If you all are looking for a tube or two, or 8 or 10, over there. We'll also have some other stuff for sale over there, which we'll do at the end. We'll have our club announcement. Actually, let's do that right now. Because I know there's one person in the room who wants to ask a question. Anyone have any announcements, questions, thoughts, concerns, help?
On the tubes, I sent out a flyer or a thing. Did everybody get it on the club news?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. So if you want, especially give me time to go through and find one and then test it if you need one. Like Lloyd just picked up a couple of tubes from me.
Good.
He got a hold of me and says, hey, give me this and this. You got them? Yeah. They tested out. Now he's all set.
Okay, good,
So
excellent.
just do it. Give me a little time if you can.
You got 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Everything must go, it's either a package deal or individual. No, nothing will be turned out. Flashlights both work, and they have batteries in them. They're what do you call them, mag lights?
Mag lights, yeah.
Mag lights.
Those are the old cop lights.
Yeah. So, and all that, we have complete, I don't know how complete, the course, National Technical School on TV and radio repair, it's in the box. I don't know how complete it is, but it's there.
So here's worthless trivia.
Yep.
back when the officers carried the big 5-cell mag lights, you ever notice they came up to the car with the handle back and the light up front? You know why? Exactly. It's a club, instant club.
Backlights,
Yeah. Of course, now they use all the little baby lights, so.
backlights give very bad light and very good clubbing.
Exactly. I have one that's going on 35 years old. I replaced the bulb with an LED, but I can't kill this stupid thing. But yeah, it's terrible light, terrible light. And then Randy, you have a question.
Yeah, I do. I put the word out back a few years ago, but either I didn't follow through or no one did at that point. But anyways, I'm still in a situation. I got a Philco floor model, 42365. It's my wife's grandmother's radio, and I want to get it working. But somebody trustworthy. If the radio was to go off and get lost, I guess I'd need a good divorce or two. So, anyway, if anybody in the room can help me out with that, or knows somebody who's, proficient enough to get this puppy going, I'd appreciate it. We're not looking for a freebie, willing to pay.
And I had mentioned Roger right off the bat, because, I mean, he does that. He's done stuff for me. That's the first thing that came to my mind. But if any of you all do it on the side, we'll talk to Randy about
Yeah,
that.
I'd be really appreciative. My wife, definitely. Thank you.
Yep.
Say again?
Is this a family heirloom?
Yes.
Okay, what kind is it?
A 42365 Philco. With the opto tubes.
And then I also want to plug Mark's fabulous ability. Some of you have probably witnessed some of the angst I'm going through. I got my father-in-law's great-grandmother's record player. It's from James K. Polk, who's a furniture builder in Atlanta, Decatur Street. I've actually found where the building was. It's long since gone. A lot of the furniture people in the 20s built furniture. They would build Victrolas and stuff, record players, and they would source parts and they would build it and stick their logo on it. Okay. Randy, the other Randy, actually has a Polk, but I think his is newer. Mine, I can't find anywhere, and none of the parts jive with anything that's sort of out there. So it was either really early model or really somebody slapped it together in the garage. The mount for the tone arm is pot metal, and it literally, you look at it and crumbles. They don't exist. I can't find one. So Mr. 3D Printer said, and some other people online said, have a 3D print of the mount made. Okay. So I did some measurements, found an online freelance CAD designer, sent him the numbers, it was $90, unlimited changes, sent me a CAD file that he literally, Mark had just literally imported, no effort whatsoever. Between a good CAD design and Mark's machinery, I now have a, hopefully, exact reproduction of this part that doesn't exist, that is critical to make the record player work, and assuming we all did our math correctly, and just drop it in and make it go. But Mark got that number, those files, whipped this thing out in like no time. On the surface, it looks perfect. I'm assuming it is perfect. But his response and the fact that he has the ability to do that is great. So if you need a part that doesn't exist, and I can give you the name and number of this CAD person if you wanted it, but that man back there created something that hasn't been made in probably 100 years and don't exist. So I'm excited to see if this actually works. And I'll make lots of points with my mother-in-law.
Did you bring in your phone on?
No, I didn't. Was I supposed to? That would actually make a lot more sense, wouldn't it?
It fits in that hole.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll find out when we get.
I have total confidence it's going to fit. We had good numbers, the drawing was good, and I'm sure this is highly accurate. So, again, I want to plug him. Thank you to him. I think I owe you some dinero. So if you need something made that doesn't exist, there's your man right there. There's your man right there. I apologize that I don't have a lot on the front end, but I knew I didn't have a lot on the front end. Any other questions or thoughts? Okay, so we'll take an extended break. I'm going to fire everything up. We'll be ready to go at 9:45 for Brian. So we got 20 minutes, 30 minutes to have some fabulous donuts and coffee. Talk amongst yourselves. I'm going to stop the recording. And speaking of recordings, last month is up there on the YouTube site. good to look at it, and we're getting some traction out there. I mean, I'm seeing the numbers. It's doing what I was hoping to do. It's getting people that can't be here to watch it. Jim is not here today, but he already said he was going to watch it when he got back. Same with Randy, so hopefully this will all work out. All right, so anything? Anybody? We'll do it afterwards. That way we don't have to rush. I don't want to rush Ben. We'll get the other done. That was part of the reason of moving it up too. I didn't want to rush at the end. He might go 10 minutes, he might go 2 hours, we don't know. But I want to give him a window. That's why I did the other stuff on the front end. So, anything else? All right. We'll reconvene in a little while. You see that okay? All right. Everybody, this is Brian Harrison. He is going to do this fabulous presentation. Like I said, this is an experiment. Let me close this thing here. And so if this works, then it's very cool.
Whoops. All right. Whoops. Hold on. Okay. All right. So we're ready to go?
Yes, we're ready to go.
Okay. Hang on. Let me figure. I got to hide this menu. I got a menu that takes up.
Okay.
All right. So we're going to talk about kind of a new collectible. If you're a radio collector, and that's. Whoops. Hold on. I got to turn down my repeater here. And that's enemies of radios of the Vietnam War. And we're going to talk about the Army Security Agency. And so I was a shortwave listener back in the 60s, early 60s, and then I became WN4KKJ in 1968. And I was pretty active, of course, all Morse code. And I even had a 25 word per minute certificate saying I could copy conversational CW at 25 words a minute, and which is good. My neighbor was a Bell South manager, and through that I was able to. He knew of my ham radio hobby, so he offered me a job on the 4A frame, which was a great job. This was right after high school. I wasn't ready for college, so this was good. Well, back then we had to worry about the draft, and so I got my letter from President Nixon saying, "Greetings, come on down." And of course, you went to the local induction center, and you had physicals taken, and also a lot of tests for mental aptitude. They also asked you what you wanted to do, and then of course afterwards you took the oath. So I was in the last draft that actually took anybody, and that was in 1971, but it was the 1970 draft. So my draft number was 33, but it's always been a lucky number for me since. So physical was no problem. Everybody's healthy at age 19 or 18. I did test for officer candidate school, and I told somebody I knew Morse code, and they said, well, if you're really, really good at it, we can give you a job with this unknown agency, which turned out to be the Army Security Agency. Very hush-hush type of group. And of course, you're in a room with all these folks also testing for Morse code, and you didn't do conversational Morse code back then, or they weren't interested in that. That was easy. What they had to deal with was code groups, and if you look at that middle line there, it's basically just a bunch of gibberish that they're throwing at you at 22 words a minute. And to be a radio operator or intercept operator, I had to copy 3 minutes, 0 mistakes. Okay, and again, I'm not making excuses, but it was a crowded room, and they had local noise and all that. Well, bottom line is I choked that test. Okay, and I'd also told one of the guys there that my uncle had been in mortars in World War II. So he said, "Oh, would you like to be in mortars?" Which is the infantry, by the way. And I said I was really tall, and so they did me a favor by not putting me as a normal infantryman. So anyway, so mortars it was. I got to Vietnam in June because I volunteered, and everybody was going home at that time, but I ended up in a, quote, infantry company providing security around the biggest base at Long Binh. So we spent most of the time either in bunkers along the perimeter or up in these towers. And that was okay for a little bit, but I wanted to do something else. So I was a mortar guy, and so they started up a heavy mortar support unit there for fire support. And this they shot really good, really bright illumination flares, among other things, and so they were very popular. So I did that for a few months. The great thing, we had 3 guns set up out in the middle of nowhere, and the best thing is we had 3/4-ton trucks, one for each gun, and when we weren't shooting, we shot at night, and then we goofed off in the daytime and slept, and we had a racetrack out in the grass, out in the elephant grass, and we would race our 3/4-ton Dodge trucks around. But anyway, and we had a fire direction center. That mortar is the smallest piece of artillery in the Army arsenal that needs a fire direction center. And so we used this building for that, and the lieutenant checked out another piece of high-tech gear at the time, a starlight scope. So we'd sit up there all night when we weren't shooting the guns and look around, and we saw lots of monkeys and deer and mongooses and whatever. So here's a view inside the fire direction center. I got to talk on a bunch of radios. We also had maps and plotting boards, and it turns out where we were at, we had electronic sensors all around the perimeter, and so we would get calls every night from the hill saying, okay, you're clear to shoot in these areas, but not in these other areas, and so we did that as we were requested, and then also every once in a while we get a call saying you've got movement at sensor number 227. So we'd fire up the guns. We had all this pre-plotted, so we'd fire up the guns and take out that sensor. We'd shoot until someone said, ceasefire, you've destroyed the sensor. We never went outside and to see what it was, though. But anyway, so the war was winding down. They decided they were really giving the South Vietnamese a lot of equipment, so we were actually replaced by 4 of these big 8-inch tracked vehicles, so we were really proud at that point. Now, the spring offensive of 1972, or the Easter offensive, it was in mainly 2 areas. An Loc, which was down towards Saigon, but that was where I started, and then also up in Quan Tri, which was up near the demilitarized zone. And so the only units pretty much left in the country at that time were aviation units and some advisors. So I went up, and they did their own security. They used U.S. troops to guard their perimeter. So that was me. So I went up to a place called Tan Mi, and I was in a unit called F Troop, 4th Cav, Air. So I got to be in an F Troop, if you remember that TV show. And we had lots of Cobras. We had Loaches, which were the small observation helicopters, and we had Hueys, or Slicks, as we called them. And our units was pretty unique in that we were one of the earliest units to have these, in the case of a Slick, an upturn exhaust. We called them toilet bowls, but what it was there for was to try to diffuse the exhaust gases because the North Vietnamese were now using shoulder-fired ground-to-air missiles, and were being very successful by using those. So all of our aircraft had some semblance of a toilet bowl to try to diffuse the hot gases. The best missions were what we call pink team missions, where we used the little small helicopters as bait. Basically, they flew about 50 feet off the ground. Cobras were sitting up at 1,000 feet, usually a pair of them doing a figure 8, and we were halfway up. We were the command and control aircraft, either with a little small group of infantry on board in case we lost a bird, or we had a forward observer on board for the artillery or Air Force or whatever it was. And I've written up a bunch of stories. I can send in if anybody wants to read some stuff. But bottom line is, we flew the last mission of the war, as far as I know. And we had gotten some intel saying that some of the fire bases down around Chulai were going to be attacked because everybody was grabbing for land in anticipation of the next ceasefire being. So the ceasefire was supposed to be come into effect at 8 a.m. on the 28th of January, 73. So we flew down the night before, and in the morning, early morning, everybody was up. It was a maximum effort. We were flying around looking for the bad guys, and we found them. But anyway, one thing, because they had this offensive. There was lots of captured enemy equipment all around. Here's one of the pilots that I flew with sitting in a little, I think that's a 27, it's either a 20 millimeter or a 37 millimeter anti-aircraft cannon that was captured. Also, you can see some big vehicles in the back. That's a personnel carrier, Chinese made. And I didn't have the wherewithal to stick my head in the turret and see what radios were in there, but I should have. So the Soviets gave a lot of aid to the North Vietnamese, mainly the high-end stuff, the aircraft. They trained pilots. They even provided pilots at first, and they helped them with the air defenses. And Hanoi had some of the best air defenses, even better than Berlin in World War II. Chinese gave them a lot of smaller military aid, including 320,000 support troops, some of which were killed in Vietnam. But this freed up their troops to do other things. But most people don't know that. But if you look at the list of some of the things, they gave them uniforms and shoes and rice and salt and meat and peanuts and beans and small arms. The small arms typically came from China, even though there were copies of Russian gear. And so here's a quick thing, quick graph showing the military aid given to North Vietnam by China. And here's a category called radio transmitters, or transmitters and receivers. So it shows they gave over 30,000 radios to the... Now there was a big collector named William Howard down in Florida. He had one of the largest, he had his own private museum, lots of captured World War II, Korean, and Vietnamese radios, because that's what he did in the Army. He'd go out after a battle and look around and see what was new and write up reports on it. He told me that, or he actually said, he only saw one Soviet radio, and this was a big Navy radio that come off some ship. But he wrote up this nice guide that I have about communications equipment in the North Vietnamese Army and the Viet Cong. And here's a list of some of the radios that he saw and wrote up in his career. Whoop. Oh gosh, I'm sorry. Hold on. I didn't want to do that. Oh gosh, hold on just a second. Sorry. Okay, good. We're back. I clicked on one of those links. Now, there's also a great book out called Unlikely Warriors, the Army Security Agency's Secret War in Vietnam, 1961 to 73. I didn't know anything about the Army Security Agency when I was there, but they were doing radio direction finding, radio traffic analysis, and of course they were doing all the intercepts, enemy radio intercepts, and from what I've read, they were the best intel of the war. So it's quite possible the intel that we got prior to that last mission came from the Army Security Agency. I had tested to be what they called a ditty bopper, a Morse intercept operator, high speed. And they also had a bunch of other military occupational specialties and all. And they also called this ditty boppers, they called them monkeys. They were taught code up at Fort Devens, Maryland. The goal was 22 words a minute, but they really didn't send much. They were trained to listen to Morse code and type it out on typewriters, or mills as they call them, with 6 or 8 carbon copies that went to various units. So their job was to intercept and to transcribe other people within the organization, analyze the messages and pass the information on and all that. I like to talk to ditty boppers when I can. What I've found is that there was typically 7 Morse intercept operators in a room, and each workstation had 2 receivers and a tape recorder. Most transmissions were between 4 and 5 megahertz. Enemy transmitters were typically very chirpy. They could tell the sender by their fist. The enemy was very prompt, and they had a lot of radio schedules. And most of the transmissions were unencrypted until the capture of the Pueblo. They had a whole bunch of Vietnamese intercept paper in one of the rooms that they shouldn't have. And anyway, after that, they started encrypting their transmissions. But they sent V's, just like we do, to tune up their transmitters. They also sent an SK or da-da-da-da-da-da at the end of their transmission. One interesting thing was that typical enemy radio operator usually stayed about a kilometer or 0.6 miles away from his unit. And that's so if he got DF'd and we attacked it immediately, that, that the other unit, the rest of his unit might not be attacked. So anyway, a while back I came across this great book that I had missed on a military site called the North Vietnamese Army Viet Cong Radio Operator's Diary. And I missed it, but the great news is this site had all the pictures. They had taken pictures of every page, so I grabbed those pictures and decided to put a presentation around, because I didn't know what radios the North Vietnamese used. The first one in that diary was the GRC-9. Well, that's one of our radios. We gave the French, for example, a lot of GRC-9s while they were there in Vietnam. These came out right at the end of World War II, and a lot of them, they really weren't used much in World War II, but they certainly were in the Korean War, and they were used early on in Vietnam by the Special Forces and other folks. William Howard mentioned that they recaptured one back from the VC and put it back in service with the South Vietnamese, so they were out there. Here's a little video I want you to watch showing one in action by the VC.
The Viet Cong headquarters is in no one place. It moves constantly, and when it moves, it takes its defense force with it. These pictures, while obviously posed for the camera, still do depict the extremes of mobility which the Viet Cong rely upon for concealment. From the air, these are peaceful fishing boats in the Mekong Delta. But they actually are the general headquarters of the Communist forces, the Viet Cong Pentagon. South Vietnamese counterintelligence worries a lot about the location of the Communist underground radio. Well, here it is. Or there it was. It moves too.
So that's a GRC-9 being used by the enemy. Here's a North Vietnamese radio operator also using a GRC-9. I have one in my collection here, and I use it on our local AM nets. Puts out about 15 watts of CW, and maybe about half that on AM. And here's just a quick tidbit.
You're holding a 5 and 9 with a little QSB up and down, but nothing consequential. You sound really good.
Well, these are still usable. Now, the Chinese equivalent of GRC-9 was the 102E, or XD6 is also another name for it. And this is another page from the radio operator diary saying these were also used. Here's a very rare picture of a 102E transmitter with Vietnamese writing or markings. Normally they were Chinese writing, and this just came from the web. I didn't see one of these. Here's a copy of a VC radio operator using Morse code and using an HD6 or a 102E. Over. Here's a quick video showing one in use during the Tet Offensive of 1968.
The 324th Division of the North Vietnamese Army had been given the task of taking Hue. Its 4th Regiment attacked from the northwest down the left bank of the Perfume River, while the 6th Regiment moved up the opposite side of the river, attacking from the southwest. The citadel itself was seized by a North Vietnamese battalion.
So normally these radios were green, but in this case, of course this is black and white, the tankers used gray radios, and I'll show you one here in a second. So back to Bill Howard, he talks about the 102E or HD6, and they were typically driven by a dynamotor. Here's, I'm a member of the radio telephone operators of the Vietnam War Facebook group. This picture was posted recently where they actually capture one of these transceivers, the transmitters on the top, the receivers on the bottom. So here's one that they found in a cache somewhere. The ASA group, they call themselves radio research companies, or RR. And here's a captured Chinese 102E HD6 being studied at Da Nang in 1969 by a ASA, Army Security Agency unit. Now, a friend of mine a while back sent me a link about something on Craigslist. It turns out a realtor was he had bought a house and he was going to flip it, but the attic was full of Army uniforms and medals and other things left behind by the previous owner, who happened to be a chaplain in the U.S. Army with lots of lots of medals. And one thing he had in his estate was this grayish green 102E or HD6. And again, the transmitter's on the top, the receiver's on the bottom. And they wanted a whole lot of money for the uniforms and medals and all that, but they didn't really want a whole lot of money for the radio. So I grabbed the radio, and when I got it home, I looked at it, and it was still covered with red dirt. And so I recognized that dirt. So this one definitely came from Vietnam. I started thinking, I wondered, was this gentleman a ham radio operator by chance? And so I looked at his name tag, said Phelps, and I looked him up on QRZ because I had the address of the house that was being sold. And turns out he was a silent key as of 2012. So someone had given him this captured radio because he was a ham radio operator and a chaplain, and he brought it home with him. And of course, it came with original documentation that I could not read, wasn't very helpful. Luckily, China, they surplused a lot of their high-frequency radio equipment in the early 2000s, and there was a company in Canada called Red Star Radio, and they sold a lot of these. And so they're around, but they're more of a darker green. They're not the gray green of the tanker unit that we saw in the last video. Luckily, someone translated all the technical information, so you can also get a copy of the technical manual, which is really, really helpful. Also, a gentleman named Dr. Ken Lakin, who was a ham radio operator, a long-time antique wireless guy, who now has passed, he spent a number of years actually producing his own technical manual about these field radios. So there's a lot of good documentation around for these. There was also an export model of this radio sold. You'll notice that all the controls are in English on this particular model. This also came from the web. I have never seen or heard of one, but I'd like to find one of those because the ones I have are all Chinese markings. They also made the same radio in separate boxes, and these were the ones that were in a lot of the vehicles that I didn't look in. The receiver is a smaller box on the right, the transmitter is on the left. And again, this is the equivalent, some people say it's the clone of a GRC-9. I got my pair from another ham, Jeep K3 HPG up in Maryland. He was a very smart guy. He actually came up with a power supply that powers both units, and he also was able to net them together because he's normally mounted into a base plate that had some interconnect wires in it that we didn't have. So anyway, so I have one of these sets as well. We have an old military radio net Saturday mornings from 5 to 7, and it's a lot of fun to put on equipment like the GRC-9 or even this Chinese gear on as well. So here's a quick video. The shiny chrome key, which doesn't seem like it's a real, military key. I also have another Chinese that we're going to talk about in a second, and the key at the bottom of the picture is from that one. It looks more separates doing a little bit of Morse code just to show you that they work. I won't belabor that. And here's the receiver actually listening on Morse code, and it's a very good receiver actually. No S meter or anything like that. It's not fancy, but it's a nice receiver. His name is Jim. That's for Jim, Katie, one-eye down there. So the next radio in the radio operator's diary is the 71B. Now, William Howard also talks about the 71B. This was a radio that ran on dry batteries, and it's a little smaller than the previous radios, but they also use these, and it was basically a clone of a Soviet HF radio of World War II called the RVM-1. Very similar and same output power and that type of thing. Now, William Howard actually had one of these. William Howard passed away and his collection dissipated, and pieces pop up from time to time. But, and of course I missed this one, but I did find the posting on Worth Point about a Viet Cong captured Chinese 71B. And if it really is captured, to me, it's a nice collectible. You can buy these out there. If you want to buy them. Some of them are damaged, and they say, oh, they're battle damaged, but probably just dropped. I was able to trade through a ham in California with a Chinese ham. So I got mine from a Chinese ham. And I sent him some American gear in exchange. And there's no good documentations for a 71B yet. So I asked my young ham friend in California if he'd translate the front markings or the knobs, and so he sent me this. So that's helpful. I have not powered up my 71B yet, but I want to, and I'll try to make it a priority soon. After I did this video originally for the Antique World Association, their YouTube channel, and after that was posted, a few days later, I got an email from another ham, a new ham, whose father had been in the Army Security Agency, and he had a Chinese 71B set. But not only did he have a set, he had a very, very special set that I'd love to have. Of course, it came with all the various, accessories. Those are antenna tuning coils, and that's a key in the box in front. Slightly different key than the ones I have. But he was nice enough to send me these pictures. And here's the radio and the battery box and the handset and all that. But if you look at the inscription on the front, that's the amazing thing. It says to Colonel Edgar F. Hoffman, Chief of the United States Army Security Agency, Pacific, from the 509th Radio Research Group. So this was an ASA unit, the 509th, which was down near Saigon, who presented the boss with a captured Chinese radio. These are the types of radios they were listening. They were intercepting. That was their job. Now, the 509th was actually called the Davis Station, and it was the largest of the ASA groups. And it was down near Saigon. And at peak, there was a few thousand ASA members all throughout Vietnam, all working with various infantry units. So here's another Chinese radio called the Model 63. And it was a backpack. It was an HF unit. It's about the size of it's smaller than a Prick 25, but it's like a Prick 8 or 9 or 10 if you know of those. radios, and just a couple of watts out, AM or CW, so a backpack radio. William Howard had one in his collection that was shot with 26 bullet holes in it, and that's what we were taught to do, is to destroy. If you were going to lose equipment to the enemy, you were supposed to destroy it. So that was a nice piece of gear in his collection. The Australians were also in Vietnam, and here's a Type 63, which is also called a 251A, that was captured by Australians during the Vietnam War, and it's in one of their museums down in Australia. And you can buy these for about $500 on eBay, for example, if you want to. I do not have one of these yet. Let's talk about VHF radios real quick. We had, this mentions the PRC-10. That was one of our early infantry radios. Here it's being used by a Marine. We actually had Prick 8, Prick 9, and Prick 10s, and they overlap slightly. Different radios were used by different groups: infantry, artillery, armored units, and an FM radio. And of course, if we had them, the enemy had them, and they liked our radios. They would rather have our radios than the Chinese radios. Okay, especially since it was a lot easier for them to either try to jam us or listen in. Here's an unidentified North Vietnamese transceiver set, and I do not know what radio this is yet. And here's the same radio being used or tested, and I'm pretty sure this is an FM set similar to our Prick 25s, which I'm going to talk about right now. General Abrams was head of the U.S. Army when I was in Vietnam, and he made a comment saying that the Army's PRC-25, or Prick 25 as we call them, was the single most important tactical field item in Vietnam, because if you had one of these radios, you could get help from somewhere. So typically, when you were on patrol, you stayed in contact with somebody. So you could call in artillery or aircraft or something. And these are out there. The Prick 25 it has a single tube in the final, whereas the next one, the 77 we're going to talk about, is totally transistorized. And so the 77 is a little easier. It'll run on 12 volts, whereas this one needs an extra filament voltage to use. So here's 77, which was the next set. It also had less intermod when you had a bunch of these sets close together. So it was a better shielded set, also fully transistorized. It would run on 12 volts. In my time in Vietnam, these radios were very coveted. They would try to get them, they'd try to steal them, buy them on the black market, capture them. And because they had so many of them, and I heard them many times on the radio, tried to break in when we were on the radio, they had an encrypted system that they went to, and if you saw somebody with one of these encrypted systems on their back, they were a really important guy, probably following around a general or something. Now these radios were everywhere. In this one particular picture, I think we see 4 in use, and of course there would have been radios in the vehicle behind it as well. And this was one of the Medal of Honor winners from during the Easter offensive. He actually blew up a bridge single-handedly to keep the enemy armor from coming across one of the rivers. So you could tell the importance of people by how many Prick 25s they had. Here's a poor guy trying to catch some sleep, but also listening to 3 Prick 25s at one time, and he's also got another spare sitting over in a backpack over above his head there. So this was a very important guy, and they were in a lot of trouble, looks like. So let's talk a little bit about the Army Security Agency in Vietnam. We had a lot of, when I was there, you couldn't tell friend from foe. We didn't know the language. It took a while once you got in country to really not only participate, but to actually help. And we didn't know the area of operation like our enemy did. So we had a lot of negatives there. So Army Security Agency got in Vietnam in 1961. Here we see a picture of two intercept guys, which is the bread and butter of the Army Security Agency, and they're listening on R392s, which is a green Army radio, which is also a very nice HF receiver. At first they used fixed direction finding sites, typically with a van, radio full of vans, and that's what we have here. This is early on in Vietnam. Here's some of the intercept receivers that they used, R390, R390A, which was a modularized, slightly cost-reduced model of the R390, easier to service. Then you have the R392. There was also a motorized 10-channel version of the R390 called the R391. And for the direction finding folks, there was a special R390 called an R725, which is an R390A, but it has the earlier LC filters, not mechanical filters, that the R390 used, which produced less distortion. So R725 was sort of a blend of the R390A and the R390, and these are very coveted. All these receivers are very coveted and used by hams today. Here's a picture of the South African intercept operation in Vietnam. They were doing, again, the same thing. When I was at Vietnam, I still saw Jeeps from time to time with a little kangaroo on their front bumper painted. So they were still there when I was there. And by the way, these are all R390s or R390As. It's just very hard in this picture to tell what they're using. Of course, we were listening to the enemy. The enemy was listening to us. So our infantry divisions, when they went out in the field, they found enemy listening posts. And typically it would be a bunker with telephone wires coming out of it. And that's how they usually found these things. And also a couple of antennas strung up in the trees. And it was full of Chinese radios and also our radios, so a whole mix. The radios we used for direction finding in Vietnam primarily was the PRD-1, which is a big, nice affair that is also very collectible, very heavy. Here's one in use early on in Vietnam where some of the ASA guys, the radio research.
Fortunately, I think he did. He ran up his 40 minutes. So, all right. But, so anyway, I thought what we saw was interesting. This was an experiment. I don't know why the audio is misbehaving. It's never misbehaved before. That's on me. We'll figure it out. But it was very interesting. I'll follow back up with him because he knew what the window was. He just was talking. I don't think it's worth spending money for a full-on account to do this once or twice a year. So that's why I like to stand in front of the window just to make sure our presenters are on board on top of that. But anyway, experiment. I think it worked. Did y'all hear in the back? I know it was a little tough, but yeah, okay. Like I said, it works better before. Dwight used to play videos all the time. They work great. Oh, I'm loud. You can hear me. Can y'all not hear me? I got a big mouth. Okay. Now I'm on. So we'll figure that out, because it worked with me the last time, so I did something stupid here. Anyway, I thought it was very interesting. I enjoyed it. I think it proves that we could do this again if we tweak it and make it a little bit better. But I think it was a good test. I thought the presentation was really good. Thoughts, opinions, either on doing it this way or the presentation? You got to crawl before you fly a jet, right? So
I'd love to hear more of the presentation.
He's an expert in all kinds of military stuff, and I'm sure he's got a whole bunch of presentations in the can that would be just as interesting as this. I've seen some of them on the beats up there that he's done live, and so he's a very, very good, knowledgeable resource on this stuff, and he's He does a great job. He's an easy presenter.
And to your point, I'll reach back out. Maybe he can do, another 10 minutes or whatever it is that we missed, and do it. Because I know we got Jacob next month. I don't remember off the top of my head who's there after it. But I'll see if we can, do the sequel part of this and do that. Yes, sir.
A few years back, he did a presentation in one of our winter swap meets on Amelia Earhart.
Yes.
And the radios in her plane and how they tried to track her down and everything. It was really, that would be worthwhile repeating.
Where does he live?
That's it.
In
Charlotte.
Charlotte.
Charlotte area. And, yeah, he could, it's been long enough that he could probably do an updated version of that that would be really good. So,
Okay.
I think he's a good resource.
Okay. So I'll reach back out to him, see if we can maybe do a little mini one of what we didn't get to see today, figure out why that's not behaving. But I think it's a tool we can consider using down the road and again expand our speakers. I was watching the body language and everyone seemed to be enthralled. So I didn't see anybody snoring or falling asleep. So that's all a good sign.
Try not to make noise.
No, I know. And then the air would kick on or whatever. So I got it. And I know this has worked better in the past. Dwight did it all the time. So I screwed something up here. So let's do this. Let's take another break. And I can put this back to normal. All right, let's go ahead and go to the show and tell. So I'm going to swing the camera around. We need a Vanna. Who wants to be Vanna? Anyone? Don't make me pick somebody. I guess it's Aries. Okay, who is the first person? I'm going to ask you. Okay. Once I get the camera turned around, I'll field the mic. But give me 1 second here. Tyler. All right.
So this is an Echo phone, and it's from about the 40s. It's a slightly larger model than the other one. I think there's an EC1, I believe, and that one has a built-in speaker. This one has a separate one that you plug in at the back. These were used during about World War II, and they were known as a morale radio for the troops around then. So, it's unrestored. But, I mean, I'm definitely taking this on as my next project because I do really like it. So, it will work. Right, who's next? Oh yeah, and I also brought a couple of tubes that I got separately from when I bought that. It's just a bunch of, transmitting. Yeah, those are the tubes right there.
Military.
Yeah. What's the really tall one? Didn't see a number of that. I couldn't tell you, honestly. I was picking up a CRT tester, and the lady had those, and she was like, "Here, you want these for $10?" And I was like, "Sure." They look funny,
Next up.
Okay, so I brought
Hang on.
that. Oh, I don't need that.
Okay.
Video this again. I have a B-17 radio that I don't have the ability to carry much anymore. So I decided for something smaller. That is a ADF, as you saw in the video from Vietnam, a direction finding radio out of a Cessna. So that's the result of military ingenuity, creativity. So that is one of the smaller units that will find our broadcast station used for aircraft navigation. So that's made by King Radio from the 80s or so. That's one of the smaller ones. They have them. I've got tons that are separate where the radio receiver is separate from the indicator dial. And of course it requires a loop antenna for it to work and a couple other things. I also have VOR and DME equipment, all aircraft related, that are a result of military ingenuity. And it's a much easier thing to carry than the 150-pound Bendix radio from the B-17. This one's mine. It's a Minerva Tropic.
It was all pretty rusted out when I bought it for about $20-25, and that's a little slide thing in the back for got your antenna connections and that. And the chassis is separate from the frame.
it's got these little blocks all around inside to isolate it. And because it was rusted out, I was like, just the outline of the decal was all that was left. And so I tried making one, which didn't work out. And I actually found it on radio days. They had them. Cost as much as what I paid for the radio. You know, but we all been there, so yeah, I bought them anyway, and they worked out good. So,
Why do they call it a trumpet master?
no idea, I guess.
Did it have some kind
It's a shortwave broadcast.
But it's military, right?
You know, they say it was, they used it, from what I could read, 45 to 46 is when it was made, so it was after the war. And but they said it was like Tyler said, a morale type radio that may have been used. I mean, it's pretty rugged, obviously, being in a solid frame like this.
Doesn't look like it's protected against humidity or any of
No,
that stuff.
no,
What's the power cord?
it's in the back. Trapdoor. I just got it tucked in there.
That's the...
Like I said, you got a ground connection there and then an antenna connection. This was the photo fact that I was able to find on it. So the next one,
Next one.
Mark Conquest.
John.
John.
Thank you. That's New Zealand World War II morale radio, and it was a New Zealand radio manufacturer, I assume. The only thing I did to it was repaint it after I cleaned it. Then I had Mark to make the new lens cover for the dial. And it does not work. It just needs to be completely refurbished. That's about all there is to it. Oh, I bought it for $24 at Coochtown.
That's cool. What band is it?
Medium wave.
Medium.
That's it.
Broadcast. This is LA stuff.
That's a signal for BC 348Q by Wells Gardner. And they made 100,000 of those. There were about several manufacturers, but Wells Gardner was one of the main ones. And those were on ships and heavy aircraft. And like the Enola Gay had a BC 348, I've been told. And I think all of those heavy aircraft had that radio. So it runs on 28 volts, has a dynamotor providing power, although after the war, when they sold them for surplus, they were popular with hams, and they created power supplies, and that one has a power supply in it that reduces the need for the dynamotor. I believe that is an extra band adapter. So
27 to 30 MC.
yeah,
CB radio.
okay, there you go.
Last but not least,
This is basically the same radio that was a couple before it, and this is a model AEW or NZ, I believe it is, manufactured 1944. I actually bought that outside of Disney World in what was it? Kissimmee. It was an antique store, and
the weird thing about it, there's a nameplate there behind the dial that would have said Armed Forces Radio Service, and the model is AEW2NZ. And from what I can determine, I believe it was actually captured by the Japanese. They didn't like the idea that it was Allied or Armed Forces, painted everything black, and then painted Japanese writing on the top of it. I've had a couple of people try to translate it. I believe the first word is colonel, and towards the bottom there seems to be the number 444, and nobody else can translate it beyond that. But it does work. I was able to restore it. There's nothing written up on it, but I was able to go component by component and get it to work, and it works fine. That would be super cool. That's it.
All right, everyone. Well, that was very, I think this is a very enlightening meeting all the way around. And for the odd times it works out that our extra presentation theme matched our show and tell theme. Like to have more of that, but it never seems to work out. Just discovered the audio problem is Zoom. Because when we were playing his Halloween things, the audio was coming through. So Zoom seems to not want to do things live through a system, probably because of potential feedback. So if we continue to use Zoom, we'll have to find a methodology around that.
What if you use that mic?
The problem is that the computer in Zoom doesn't allow you to feed anything out. It just wants to use.
Just pick it up by putting it next to
Well,
it.
we ended up putting that mic under there, but it's not the best way to do it. But
I think we'll have to try it.
Yeah.
I think it's possible to plug a cable into the headphone jack of the computer.
probably can.
And run it,
Yeah.
but we're gonna have to
Well,
do
it's,
it twice, because you gotta get it into the camera, you gotta get it into the PA.
right.
We gotta make sure that's working.
But Zoom is the one creating the problems, and that's what it is. So I knew it worked. We've done it before, unless we heard Halloween stuff, but we got to figure out how to deal with the Zoom, because Zoom wants to do things to protect itself from feedback and stuff like that. Anyway. Oh, thank you for, duh. This is controlled from the phone, so if I'm not on the phone and I'm not thinking about it, so I'm panic. Anyway, great meeting next month, August 9th. Show and tell is metal radios and record player radios, all one. Jacob is going to do his reprise of the Western Electric presentation that he did at the spring event. Randy will be our member of the month, which is going to be very interesting. I know enough about his broadcast history that I'm looking forward to it. Again, swap meet October 11th. Go to Facebook, watch the videos on YouTube if you're dying to see a replay of it. Tell your friends about it. Any questions, any thoughts, opinions? Who to bet on the football game? Anything? Good. All right. Thank you all very much. We'll see you